Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for your testimony. You know, I want to pick up where Senator Tester left off. As the Housing Subcommittee Chair, we have taken a particular interest in stopping foreclosures on military families. And at one of the hearings I chaired, we invited Dick Harpootlian to testify, who is an attorney who represents military families who were illegally foreclosed upon by some of the largest banks in violation of the Service Members Civil Relief Act. And it seemed to me from his testimony and other sources that the act is either not well understood on the benign side, we'll say that, or simply not followed and needs better enforcement. For example, Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, and J.P. Morgan Chase collectively agreed to pay $80 million to hundreds of military families whom they illegally foreclosed on. So, Mrs. Petraeus, my question is, what can the CFPB do to help the problem of service members and their families being threatened with foreclosure and a high interest rates when they are on active duty?
I've certainly had the opportunity to talk about this issue, and I did hear Mr. Harpootlian testify over on the House side, along with a young captain who had been impacted by being foreclosed on, or while he was, or the threats of it while he was deployed. I should first point out that is a law, the Service Members Civil Relief Act. That is not a law that the CFPB will enforce. That does remain with the Justice Department Civil Rights Division, and it's partly because, as you said, it's a very complicated law. There's a lot of pieces to it. But we did want to take steps, so if we got complaints that came into us, first of all, that our consumer response folks would be able to identify something that was a potential SCRA complaint. So we've done some training in our own system so people recognize it. And we also met with all the JAGs and the Justice Department in the same room, and we and the JAGs of all the services signed a joint statement of principles. And really one of the main drivers of that was to make sure that SCRA complaints did not fall through the cracks, and that we would have a procedure for what we would do with them if we got them to see that they would be addressed.
Well, I appreciate that, because the Justice Department, of course, is sometimes it's a matter after the fact when you've gone to, the nightmare of foreclosure while you are stationed abroad. And while you may get relief at the end of the day, financial relief by an action taken by someone like Mr. Harpootlian on behalf of those families, that doesn't mean that you solve the problem of keeping your home. And so I hope that while you may not have direct jurisdiction, I appreciate this effort. We would love to work with you all to try to have a more vigorous approach that has those who give mortgage products out understand the responsibility they have here at the end of the day, so we can prevent that action versus deal with the aftermath of foreclosure.
Much better to be proactive than reactive. And frankly, it all boils down to that person on the other end of the phone. And if they're unaware of what they should be, what protections they should be extending, then you're going to have a problem for that service member.
Is the Justice Department considering bringing in the largest mortgage entities and giving them a little bit of a primer here on what they're supposed to do? Do you know whether your discussions have led anything to that?
I have not heard that in particular from them, but again, a lot of what they do, they don't announce publicly. Right. I did have the opportunity. I went ahead and wrote a letter to the CEOs of the 25 largest banks several months ago saying this has been an issue, and I hope that you will look at your own practices and make sure that you're not doing this to the service members who have accounts with you.
I appreciate that. We'll follow up with Justice. Let me ask you collectively, I know that some of my colleagues before have talked about the Military Lending Act, and I just want to get a bottom line answer here. It seems to me that the act, which capped annual interest rates for consumer credit to military borrowers at 36%, including fees and charges, but has been narrowly defined in payday lender loans, in vehicle title loans, and tax refund anticipation loans, but they don't include high-cost credit cards. They do not include overdraft loans, military installment loans, any forms of open-end credit, mortgages, auto loans. If the public policy in one universe is to protect service members at the end of the day from such high interest fees and charges. Is there a public policy reason not to extend that to this broader universe for service members?
Well, I'm all about consumer advocacy, so I would love to see broader protections. But I know the devil is in the details, trying to write a rule that does it in a way that doesn't have unintended consequences. But yes, I'm for broader protections.
Anybody have a public policy why that's not a good one?
I was going to climb on the side of saying that I think there's a public policy reason to extend it for the same reason that the original legislation was put in place, because of the effect that it was having on servicemen and women, on their condition, on their loss of security clearances, on their loss of readiness to deploy, and the morphed measures that have been taken to deal, to go around those measures that are in existence have effectively produced the same circumstances, just with slightly different products.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.